Welcome to Lykken on Lending, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of the mortgage industry. Your host, David Lykken, bringing you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. Whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, this show is your go-to source for all things mortgage. On Lykken on Lending, we're not just about delivering information, we're about delivering it in a way that's lively, engaging, and yes, even entertaining. You'll hear from a wide range of regular contributors, experts who make the complexities of the mortgage business not just understandable, but enjoyable. Our goal? To keep you informed on the operational aspects of the industry. Everything from regulations and compliance to technology and market trends, without ever being boring. We believe that staying up to date doesn't have to be dull, and our interactive conversational style ensures you'll be hooked from the get-go. So get ready for detailed discussions, lively debates, and a wealth of knowledge that will help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of the mortgage industry. Let's get started. This is Lykken on Lending. Now your host, David Lykken.
Listeners, we have got another podcast for you. It's going to be a great one, but we're calling this one Take Two because somehow, or the technology messed up when we recorded the first time. So these two graciously came back on, and we're recording it again. Joining me today is Greg Sher. Everyone's knowing about this guy, posting like crazy, and the infamous, maybe brilliant Taylor Stork. Good to have you here, Taylor. Good to have you, Greg. I'm excited to talk with you again today. I'm sorry we had to do this again, but sometimes do-overs are the best.
What? Things have happened since the last time we talked.
It's extended me a lot of grace and mercy, by the way. We usually get on these calls. By the way, listeners, one of the things I should say, Greg, Taylor, and I get on regular calls talking about all that's going on in the industry, and Taylor and I are trying to do our best to control Greg and all his posts out there. So if something goes wrong, it's not Taylor's or my fault. It's just Greg doing his thing, you know what I mean? But we're doing our best to make sure he stays in the lanes and doing some good posts. But it is an honor to work with you, Greg. And Taylor, you know how much I enjoy you as a critical thinker, a lot of perspective, especially what you're doing with CHLA. Let's get started. We're going to start out our discussion talking about the future of HUD and the GSEs. I want to get some perspective from the two of you guys about Scott Turner, person who's been named to be the new HUD Secretary. Any data points on that? Greg?
It's funny because since the last time we talked, I did hear something about him from an industry insider. So this is good that we are re-recording. Lots of conversations around HUD zoning, which apparently he is an expert on. And Donald Trump has taken advantage of HUD zoning to build structures. And I've been told there are meetings happening right now to get ready for it.
Really?
Yep.
When you say HUD zoning, what do you mean? That's what I was going to explain for our listeners. What do you mean by HUD zoning?
Well, I can only assume that this means zoning certain areas as being eligible for government contributions to building dwellings, dwellings. So that's all I know. But I know that he is meeting with officials. He knows his way around the block, so to speak. And I've been told that this is something that's important to Trump and that it might be something he leans into. So aside from that, this is his second time in the Trump administration.
It is.
He was part of 2019, Trump brought him in, not in this capacity, but by all accounts, he's a man of faith. He was a Division I college athlete.
Yep. I would like to say that he was a San Diego Charger, and as a San Diegan, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, very cool.
That too. Yeah. So
I was in San Diego there. I remember him fairly well.
So he told his mom when he was 10 years old, he was going to do whatever it took to get into the NFL. And he was right. Yeah. So this is someone that's not afraid of hard work.
Well, and he was also a former staffer for another San Diego Charger that ended up on Capitol Hill, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yep. He's been involved in politics supporting, and he made a run for it himself while he was in California. And that didn't go so well, so he's been playing a supportive role ever since. We know his very conservative background. He is a motivational speaker. He's not going to be someone who's going to be boring to listen to in conferences when we have him in and showing up. And I think he has a real vision for what it is. One of the things that's been clearly stated is that we have a housing supply problem, clearly, and they're wanting to go into it. They're going to be also looking at creating more first-time home ownership opportunities is one of the things that they're going to try to do more of. And love to get your perspective on it. CHLA, you see the need, and we're in work inside there a lot. Taylor? what's your thoughts on Scott and what we can anticipate changing?
Again, San Diego Charger can't be bad. I can't say that I'm an expert on this particular area. I think there's going to be a lot of wait and see regarding the various different appointments and positions. Clearly, look, let's be honest for a second. The HUD Secretary is an important cabinet position, no doubt. They're arguably the senior advisor to the president on housing, one of two senior advisors on general monetary policy, the other being the Treasury, currently held by Janet Yellen. However, when the wheels hit the road, when the rubber hits the road, it's the FHA director, it's the president of Ginnie Mae, it's the CFPB director, the FHFA director that are going to ultimately be the people that are making the critical tactical decisions and pointing us the direction we're going to go.
Yep. One of my friends' name being circled in for FHFA, so we'll find out. Hopefully, we're going to have people.
I'm not. I already said no to it.
You've already said no. I
said no, Dave.
You want a great opportunity. That's hilarious.
It's a long drive to DC.
Yeah, it is a long drive, huh?
For some of us, it's right down the street.
Yeah, it's just down the street. I tell you what, I'm anticipating.
Just ask the NBA. They learn the hard way.
I think when you look at what the efficiencies we're going to have coming, is that we're going to see a smaller HUD, a much more efficient HUD. And so I think a lot of people that are working at HUD, we could anticipate them entering the workforce again.
That gets tricky, right? Because some of the bureaucracy that is out there could be scaled back, certainly. But there are things that we need. And, not for nothing, last night they announced that they're giving a government holiday on Christmas Eve. That's great if you're a government employee, but if you need wires processed by the Fed, it could become problematic, right? If you need your transcripts processed, it could be problematic. And God forbid the government shuts down again. And Greg is going to give you a long list of negative impacts that happen when people in the government don't show up to do the work that those of us that are taxpayers need to have done.
Yeah. You raise a good point. There's certain functions. We know Ginnie Mae has been understaffed, woefully understaffed.
Woefully.
So when we're talking about, what I'm talking about is...
Let me interrupt you. Ginnie Mae makes a ton of money for the government. Ginnie Mae is a fundamentally profitable organization.
It is.
If Ginnie Mae was a private company, that would be stock you wanted to buy.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of stock you want to buy, let's talk about the GSEs. The last time Trump was in administration, there was a concerted effort to privatize them. Love to get your perspective on that, Taylor.
I think it's going to happen again. There's a lot of talk and a lot of different discussion about reprivatizing the GSEs. This concept that there has to be consensus within Congress. HERA and the structure of the original conservatorship already has a predetermined process so that the GSEs can exit. I think that a abrupt, unplanned exit could have terrible unintended consequences.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to be thoughtful about it. I hope and I think that most of the policymakers in Washington, including some of the newcomers into the space, hopefully they will recognize that an abrupt exit would be dangerous for mortgage in general and for our economy as a whole. But I think that an orderly planned exit can make a ton of sense. CHLA and most of the trade associations, to be honest, have long advocated for an exit whereby the GSEs continued to have a strong regulatory approach, a strong regulatory influence by the government, something akin to a utility model that feels a little bit like a public-private partnership. And I think that's going to be important, no different than it was with the railroads, back in the early 1900s when they needed to change.
Yep, and they did. Greg and I happen to take a little bit different view of this. I do not want to see them go bit privatized. They're core to our fundamentally to our housing finance system we have. If it's not broken, why fix it? Greg?
I'm with you. I spoke to Mark Calabria, 8 months ago, former FHFA director. I'm not trying to name drop, but
you're good at it.
His point I see his perspective. Look, it was never supposed to stay like this. It was always supposed to be temporary. He's very stuck in what it was supposed to be, like by law.
Yeah.
What is it? What is the object you're supposed to strike and strike it? Easier said than done because a couple of factors. Right now, the last thing that we need is for things to get even clunkier when it comes to affordability and just the process around housing. And there will be inevitably bumps in the road through that kind of transition. So they're making money. And the last time I looked, maybe the numbers have changed. It was something like
they're
$1
doing
billion
a lot of
a
money.
month.
A lot of money. Yep.
Billions
That's a lot
and
of money.
billions
So,
a month.
huh?
Billions and billions a month.
Yeah. So nothing's broken. So what are we really trying to fix? And those people that want to go back and say, well, it was never intended to be this, that's fine. Things change, right?
Well, you know what's really interesting, you go back and study the origins, they started out as government entities.
It's called the Federal National Mortgage Association.
Yeah,
that's what Fannie Mae is.
That's exactly right. They started as a part of the federal government. And now they spun out into quasi status. So we had publicly traded companies. They came back in with the housing crisis. But I mean, I think everyone thinks they were separate. But the reality is, no, neither Fannie or Freddie. They started out separate. And so I think we are back to the way we started. The question is, we go out and privatize them to what extent? I remember it was a number of years ago, back when the quote unquote efficiencies of Wall Street were doing real well back in the 90s. And they go, why do we even need a Fannie and Freddie? Wall Street is now so efficient. We don't need it. How
well that worked out.
And then how did that work out for us when the liquidity crisis hit? We had the issue with long-term capital. When they failed, sucked the liquidity out. We watched what happened when we got creative in our marketing strategy and how we created products that were just not sustainable. And we ran into the housing crisis. We need a Fannie and Freddie in place. And I think the concern I have is if we privatize them, what I could see combining the two of them possibly.
No.
All right. Why?
Competition is good.
Okay.
You want competition. When you combine things and you end up with only one credit score, there's no competition, and then people do whatever they want.
We're going to get into that one in just a minute.
Let's open up that Pandora's box right now.
Now,
you notice how I can do that? I can transition right into a mess.
Roll
the grenade in the room and then get back.
You hit one of Greg's nerves on that one. That one just like...
Listen, this is the topic that introduced Greg and I in the first place, like 16 months ago? This is the very first conversation we ever had.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. Well, the bottom line is we are going to have new administration. We're going to be seeing there's clearly looking for new efficiencies, a smaller government. And so how that plays out, we are going to have to just fasten our seatbelts and watch out. I think the most important part is the MBA, or I think it's more like CHLA, is what you're doing is yeoman's work, Taylor, there at CHLA. And I think that is one, you don't have some of the conflicts that the MBA has that are inherent to what the MBA is trying to do. They have an impossible task of trying to please both ends of the perspective. We have the IMBs, but in CHLA, it's really representing the IMBs more than anyone else. So hopefully we're going to see you play a bigger role in it. So kudos to CHLA. And if you haven't become a member of CHLA, you need to. Listeners,
David, NFM, the company that I work for, just joined CHLA. I announced it on my LinkedIn profile a couple of days ago, and I've had a really unique vantage point getting to know Taylor, getting to know Scott Olson, who grew up on the Hill. Very smart, very rational, very thoughtful, thought-provoking. They involve the members, and I'm already seeing a major benefit for our organization, and I can't wait to work alongside them as they continue to craft LO comp reform, which is a very important topic. It's long overdue. And, Scott Olson, he worked alongside Barney Frank for years. So, he knows about Dodd-Frank as well as anyone. He's in the middle of that room in that conversation, and that's where IMBs need to be.
That's exactly right.
Can I just thank you? I just want to thank you both, because, Dave, you said some really nice things, and Greg, that post you put up on LinkedIn, I swear, when I started seeing the responses, I got a little teary-eyed. Thank you.
People love you, man. You are loved by all.
I think there's the need. Why did we have such an overwhelming statement in this last election? Is because there was people that are just fed up and tired of certain aspects of the political environment. I appreciate so much what the NBA has done. We miss David Stevens. We miss him a great deal. He was a tremendous leader. We need some new leadership.
He's the one that introduced me and Greg, for the record.
It was David. Yeah. David has been a long-standing friend. We've known each other for many, many decades, and I just so miss him. And
in a lot of ways, the NBA has a thankless job.
They do. And
it's hard. Look, it's a big machine. They've done a ton of good. But they're also huge at this point. And, FICO is a member. Look, they're a member. It's widely known.
We're going to get to that.
IMBs are members. So when you start to talk about...
I'm a member. You're a member.
You're a member. I'm a member.
We should do a song. He's a member. She's a member.
We need the NBA to do their job. They've done a great job. But they're not going to win every time. I think 2024 was a very difficult year for them between triggers and the FICO increases.
That are there. When you follow the money, And when you have look at who's paying the largest dues in that, don't tell me that doesn't have an influence on where you're going to be going with policies and recommendations on the Hill. It's a conflict. I respect it. I understand the difficulty of it. So kudos, join CHLA, and you'll see your money be well spent.
Yeah,
Let's talk about, you brought up MLO.
And I just want to point out, many of our members are members of both.
Yeah.
And I'm a member of both. And there's a lot of trade associations in housing and mortgage, and they do a lot of good work. And it's important that we have a lot of voices.
Yeah.
So just to say that.
I think it's important to realize we got to have multiple voices, but I really want to start seeing CHLA rise up as a stronger voice amongst those, because it's been one strong voice with a few little ones chirping around the side, and now we need to increase CHLA's voice out
Thank
there.
you.
So very excited about it. Let's start talking about MLO comp. Scott Olson at CHLA has played a big role in that, has really made some great arguments for that. Greg, let's start with you. Your thoughts on the needed changes of MLO comp, mortgage loan originator compensation.
Having sat in the room with CHLA over the last year or so, I do believe that something is going to happen, that it will be changed. I can't exactly say how. I know that we've had a lot of discussions behind closed doors, but I'm hopeful and optimistic. And I think a lot of it is rooted in a price we continue to pay for the financial crisis. So,
we're still paying a but how long do you have to pay for that? I mean,
I agree. We're going on 2 decades right now. And
for as long as Fannie and Freddie are still in conservatorship, because that's part of the price.
Yeah, right. But if you look at, there's a lot of things going on here. There's technology and how that has helped to move. There's AI and all these other things that are driving the cost to originate down. And it's also benefiting the consumer, because there's a race to the bottom when it comes to rates. What's broken is this model where you're paying your loan officers 125, 150, 175 basis points. At the end of the day, the deals that they can win at that comp are few and far between. So they're having to push down, in many instances, the rate, the comp, all of that. And I just think that you need to clear the deck and reboot. To me, when I look at the landscape, not a popular opinion, but I believe that loan officers should be making somewhere between 85 and 90 basis points. To me, that's the level set that is necessary. But if that doesn't happen, I do think that if loan officers are willing to take less comp to win a deal, to match a price, and lenders are willing to make a little bit less, they should have that ability. Most businesses have that ability, right? And mortgage
ironically, that's exactly the cornerstone of the Sitzer-Burnett, settlement with NAR. That's exactly the cornerstone of why the Department of Justice was pursuing the entire realtor commission structure as a conversation. It was in order to increase competition. It was in order to give the consumers the ability to negotiate specifically the compensation for the broker that was selling them or helping them sell or buy a house. And so to have a model where one half of the business is mandated by law practically to negotiate compensation, and then the flip side of the coin, the other half of the business is prohibited from negotiating compensation. It just literally boggles my mind to understand it. It just makes it's like bizarre land.
Well, it's a massive hangover. It's like DOS. It's long overdue for an overhaul. Like we're still living in 2008.
Thing. Scott will tell you, he was in the room for the negotiations over LO Comp when the CFPB was created by Elizabeth Warren and others through Barney Frank and Senator Dodd. And during all of that period, Scott was front row. He ran the financial services. He was in charge of banking for the Financial Services Committee. So what's interesting is the original intent of LO Comp was not what it is today. The whole concept of proxy was never what it has turned into today. The intent was to change the model where a certain segment of the business, I'm going to just say it was brokers, where brokers were pricing up pre-2008. And we can go back and go watch the movie The Big Short. They did a pretty good job of making the example. The idea was to stop that model where you priced up a loan to consumers who didn't know any better and couldn't fend for themselves. Yeah. But that was pre-2007. We live in a post world where consumers have more information at their fingertips than our own loan officers do. Yep. Consumers often walk in the door telling us what our price is going to be long before we tell them what our pricing looks like. Our loan officers are navigating through some of the most competitive environments they've seen since, I would argue, since the mid-90s. Dave, you remember what the mid-90s looked like. Yep. I think Greg was still in grade school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So our entire environment doesn't mandate the model that was created under the LO comp rule, nor that how that model has been changed by, I would say, the CFPB over the last, 15 or so years, incorporating in these proxy rules. It's time to re-talk about this conversation in the framework of 2020. It's going to be one of the key hallmark policy pushes that CHLA makes. We're
in the midst of
going to push hard on this.
That's good. That's really good to hear.
We have refi fees. We have LLPAs. I mean, fee after fee after fee has been levied upon the consumers that they're supposed to keep us away from. Can you imagine?
No. And there's no other business model that I know of. You tell me if I'm wrong, where the government decides that an employer can't negotiate through and work with an employee and dictate how the employer and the employee are going to compensate for a process.
That has got to change. And I really believe we're set for it, especially when we have a new administration that's interested in creating greater efficiencies and better benefits to the consumer. What we have, our current MLL system, is actually works against the goal of helping a consumer get the best mortgage under the best terms. So I think, is the possibility of that changing in 2025, or is it second year, 2026? Any thoughts, projections?
Well, so the CFPB has broad authority in this area. And I mean, I personally talked about this with senior leaders of the CFPB of the current administration, and I cannot wait to talk about it with whoever's in charge of the next administration. They have broad authority with regard to how they police, how they do rulemaking, how they exam, all of those things. I believe that if they chose to, that they could take some pretty aggressive, dramatic action quickly. However, we're not going to wait around for that to happen. We're pursuing a few different avenues as it relates to LO comp. And one of those is relooking at what an actual proxy is and suggesting some specific definitions for it, because this idea of proxy has turned into anything and everything that you can fit inside of a box is a proxy. And that's really, that wasn't the, as told to by the people who created the rules. You can literally call one of those two lawmakers whose name is on it, and he will say, yeah, that wasn't really what we meant.
I remember running into Senator Dodd in the Dulles airport as we're flying out, and we were just finishing up a mortgage conference, and we were all standing in line ready to go through. I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, you have to go through the same line as we do? And he says, just like the rest of you all. And I said, well, anyway, there's a group of mortgage bankers back here. In the course of my peers were just horrified that I'm tapping on the shoulder of the guy that created the legislation that everyone hates, that was learned to hate. Anyway, so I said, I got to ask you a question. If you had a chance to do a mulligan on Dodd-Frank, would you? He says, oh, yeah. Are you kidding? There were so many things we were working to get right. But like anything else, yeah, you wish you could do a mulligan. So he was transparent about it. And this is one of those ones. I think it's going to happen so fast. And I mean, the most important part, again, get involved in an organization that is going to be leading and instrumental in making those changes that doesn't have the conflicts. Again, CHLA. So this is not intended to be just an advertisement for a big promotion, but at the same time, I have no problem doing that, because I think you guys, especially Scott, are uniquely equipped to make that place. Which, let's get into the main.
That's amazing. I mean, I've learned so much working with him the last couple of years. It's been fantastic.
And the part that I enjoy most, there's Patrick Lencio says of the ideal team player, hungry, humble, and smart. He is all of those guys. Crazy smart. He is humble, and he is willing to work just really, really hard. He's hungry for change, and he will make it happen. So I applaud him for what he's doing. Let's get into talking about operational manufacturing costs. $12,000 to $13,000 per loan is just absolutely not sustainable, and we've got to get it down. More importantly, if we continue to tolerate that, others are going to come in from the outside. I know companies that are manufacturing at a fraction of that cost.
Yeah. Mortgage Bankers Association at annual said that it costs $10,700 to manufacture a loan. I ran that by Stan Middleman, founder of Freedom Mortgage, and he laughed in my face pretty much and said, that's a bunch of crap. For the most part, paraphrasing, he was much more gentle about it. But his point was, it's all the people that are getting paid on every single mortgage transaction. You're paying your LOs too much. You're paying your regionals too much. You're paying their regionals too much. There's too much excess fat. He makes the claim, and I can't quite get there, but he's worth a lot more money than I am. We all know.
And he wrote a book. Don't forget he wrote a book.
No, he said that it should cost 30 to 40 basis points to manufacture a loan.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
I agree with him.
Yeah.
He's right. Because you got to think about this. Look, full disclosure, I am a licensed loan officer. I have been for as long as they've had licenses, or at least as long as I was old enough to have one. I had a license before we had licenses, because in New Jersey, they had licenses before licenses. And I still close the occasional loan once in a while because I like to keep my fingers in it and know what my customers are going through. Here's the reality. We all know, look, math, right? Every eighth in rate is roughly 50 basis points, give or take, when you look at the buy down grid, right? Give or take. Sometimes it's a little off depending on how the secondary market is working. So if you're paying out 150 basis points in commission, what that's actually doing is it's putting 3/8 of a percentage onto the interest rate for your borrower.
Exactly.
So you have to start to ask yourself the question, 3/8 of an interest rate over however long they keep that loan, that's a pretty steep price to pay.
Oh.
Are we demonstrating that value? Is probably the better way to put it.
Yeah. No. The reality is the bigger threat is to those that are not seeing this as those that I'm talking to as a consultant. I talk to all these third parties, and they're seeing opportunity to come in and disintermediate, destroy, disrupt the current structure. And they're coming up with things, and it's all being done through technology.
AI is coming at us fast and furious. It's going to be here. It's actually already here.
It is already here. Yeah. We've got Pavon and Angel AI that has got his cost down well under $1,000 a loan. We've got Radius Financial up that's been working on it. Keith and Sarah have been working on this up in the Boston market, relentlessly working on it by using little pieces of bots and things like that to continue to take out the human process out of it. Yeah. And the reality is so much of what we're doing does not require a human element because it is replicable with what the technology we have today.
Let me tell you what the biggest obstacle to cost to produce is excess in our tech stacks.
Oh,
that is the elephant in the room.
I could lay out technology companies that charge you licensing fees regardless of how many people you have.
That's another topic. Let's put that on the sideline. You know, ICE is one of those companies. You've got a seat minimum should go away. I in fact said on a previous post on LinkedIn that there should be accountability clauses in every vendor's contract where if they're not willing up front before you sign to say, here's how we're going to show up, when we're going to show up, what we're going to get done when we do show up, with obviously some margin there of failure, no problem, so that you can grade them and fire them if needed. But we get trapped into these agreements with these vendors.
Yeah.
And it really puts people in mortgage companies in a very tough position. If I just put my hand in the NFM lending where I work, the NFM lending tech bag, and pulled out 10 random vendors, laid them on the table, I guarantee you there would be every single one of those vendors would have some form of crossover that another one of them does the same function, a similar function. And so we've had a race of money come into this space because we have been late adopters technologically, right? The mortgage business has maybe been the last big industries to adopt technology. We're not great at it, right? I mean, just look at, I'm not going to get into it. My point is that we've had this huge rush of people to come in that haven't made money, by the way. Like I don't know how many tech companies are making money these days. But
Blend is losing less.
So they're hanging on by a
losing less.
They're hanging on by a thread. Not all of them, but many are hanging on by a thread. So I think there has to be a shakeout to get to the answer to your question. Your question was, how do we get to a lower cost to produce? For IMBs, it starts with your tech stack. And it also starts with demanding more of these vendors that are desperate to get you before you sign on the line that is dotted. You need accountability clauses because if they're not who they say they are, you should have the right to say goodbye.
Absolutely. That's an interesting concept. It's funny that we have one handful of vendors that are completely kind of at the mercy of that kind of conversation. But then we have this other handful of vendors that are completely immune to it, that would laugh at you if you brought that up. Some of them provide us with things like credit reports. And actually, I should say, some of them provide our credit report companies with information and scores for credit reports or technology so that we can originate and process loans.
Yeah. Who's going to survive the tech battle is he who has the biggest amount of capital in there. It's not going to be the most talented or the most innovative. We're at a place right now. He who has the gold is going to win this race. There's going to be a consolidation. We're already seeing that happen. That's unfortunate. You look at how many companies out there have 4 or 5 CRMs because this loan officer group that joined the company had to have this CRM group and another CRM. There's so much duplicity in so many companies, at least in the CRM space. And so we're going to see that consolidation happen. Is the best one going to win? Now, I'm not sure that will be. I think it's the one with the greatest amount of capital. And so anyone selecting technology, who you should be sticky with, check the capital, check the money, because that's the one that's going to last. It's not the one with the greatest features and all of that. It's just real.
But having said that, that does not always lead to a road of prosperity, David, because the companies that have the most cash that are doing well, those could also be takeout targets. And when that happens, and I've lived this with Surefire, as it traded hands all the way through Black Knight and ICE, that is a very, very treacherous road. And that's actually what led us to switch CRMs. So just because they have all the cash and the coffers are full doesn't mean, I think to me, it's more about the people. Like I chose Total Expert because of Joe Wheelu, who's the founder of Total Expert. And the fact that they've got people that have been with the company since the beginning. You know, they talk like me. They sound like me. We have real conversations. They care. You know what I'm saying? So to me, the vendor relationship, like it should start like any other relationship. And the value you should put in, this is sort of saying the same thing, David, because your point was it's not necessarily about the best technology. It's about who has the most loot. Combine that with it's really about who has the best people.
Yeah, at the end of the day, people and capital is what's going to win this thing.
Taylor, you like that? I got an eyebrow raise out of you, buddy.
Yeah, you got an eyebrow raise. I
love that. It was just one though. I was wondering. I wasn't going to say anything. I thought maybe you had a problem with the other eyebrow.
No. I do have a problem with the other eye. Some people. Are you making fun of my physical handicap?
I don't know.
It's not a very nice thing to do.
Other than being unusually handsome.
So the reality is, though, we do have a tech stack consolidation that's underway, and it's going to be accelerating at a pretty steep rate. So
wait, let me just interject. Here's the good news. AI is coming at us so fast, we're going to see all new technology that we didn't even dream of.
Didn't know it was there.
Ago.
Yeah, exactly right. I agree with you.
That's the other good piece. I simultaneously, so I agree with you. And a lot of older, outdated, dare I say, archaic technology, some of them is our main technology providers. Some of that archaic technology, although they may hold a dominant space in the industry, like, 65% penetration, new technology is going to emerge so fast and be better. And I am very, very optimistic about new tech and AI and hopeful that it becomes kind of the great equalizer that enables smaller companies and middle-sized companies to successfully compete with the big guys. Right? Because the more competitors we have in the space, the better it is for our loan officers, for our borrowers, for our realtors, for everybody. Yeah. And AI and tech has the ability to bring in that level of freedom.
And we've seen it begin to happen. It will happen at a blinding rate.
It's confusing, David, too. Almost every company I talk about talks about this idea of market intelligence. And it seems to me like everybody's got a different definition of it. The other day, I talked to a vendor who said, we also have great market intelligence. And I said, the last 6 people that I've talked to around your space have also told me they've got great market intelligence. And what she said to me was, yeah, but ours is better than all of theirs. It's like, that's where that overlap comes in and confusion. And it's just very hard to sort it all out.
I started selling rates. I started selling rates 25 years ago, and I'm going to the realtor's office. What do you got? I got the best rate and the best service. No matter who you worked for, what you did, you always had the best rate and the best service, right? It's the same basic conversation.
I know I'm hogging up this topic, but I just want to say I also have a lot of empathy for the tech vendors that are out there.
Oh, I do too.
Who got in 2, 3, 4 years ago, put it all on the line, and it didn't turn out to be what they thought it would be, and they're hanging on, month by month, trying to raise more capital, and the runway's not that long. So I'll take more calls now than I've ever taken before, just to hear people out. Maybe I can find someone that I know in my Rolodex, and I can start to help this process of combining forces. That's how we look at it.
Well, we definitely expect more changes, but you're right, Taylor. The new is what's coming in. It's not the current list of vendors that are out there. We're having a new crop come in that is just going to eclipse this and bring product to market at a much reduced cost on a variable cost model. They're not going to lock you in for 5 years and handcuff you, especially then saying that, but we've got 65% of market share, so we can do that. That's dangerous thinking, and they should be changing that, or they're going to find themselves out of business. Let's talk about one of your favorite topics, FICO. You look at the cost structure. I mean, we have these vendors. We need more innovation and more people brought in. I know, Greg, you and I are both swagging around, but we've got to create the soapbox for Greg to get up on and start beating and thumping on. All right, we teed it up for you, Greg. Run for it.
I got something to say after Greg, but I'm excited to say it.
It's so absurd. We're talking about fees and we're talking about controlling costs to consumers, yet FICO is the only credit report that Fannie and Freddie will accept when purchasing loans. Think about that. And so they've created this monopoly, and FICO has no end in sight. There is no competition. There is Vantage Score out in the yonder, but that's very confusing too, by the way. It's absurd that FICO has the control they have and that they're driving so carelessly down the road. And Will Lansing, the CEO of FICO, who made $66 million.
Statement that you were saying the other day, you were saying he sees a lot of room for them to increase their fees even more.
Yeah, because he said it on a July 31st earnings call. He said, for those of you that know about mortgage and aware of the fees and the amount of money that's realized through a mortgage, we are just a tiny little piece. As if this is some pie where anybody can just stick their hand in and grab the biggest.
That's what they think.
Like it's
That's what they think.
free-for-all.
They think it's a big grab bag of a pie, and they should get a bigger share. They're not getting enough. That's what they think.
Yeah.
So David, you know how I feel about this. Trump administration passed an act which ordered FHFA to bring more competition into the credit space, and that opened the door for Vantage Score. And as of the fourth quarter of this coming year, 2025, as of now, unless there's a delay or something changes, Vantage Score is going to be required along with the FICO 10T.
But that's not bringing in competition.
It's not. So this is the thing. So
that's creating a duopoly where we used to have a monopoly.
Yeah. So we're actually, believe it or not, and people are not going to believe this. They're going to have to rewind this and play it again. They're going to be so mesmerized by this in a bad way. We're going to now be paying for two instead of one.
I know.
So, and I was told today by a really good source that Vantage Score's costs, Taylor, they mirror FICO's.
You're going to mirror. Oh, of course.
When I say mirror, I mean identical.
Yeah.
So when I ask the people at Vantage Score, hey, what are you going to charge? Oh, we don't know. We don't have clarity on that. That's actually not true from what I'm told.
Vantage Score might not have clarity. Vantage Score might. I'm going to get off my soapbox and let you go, Greg. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, it seems like FICO, even in this new world, is still going to be very much at the controls, and that's what we need to fight against.
All right. So I would like to disclose something very personal. This is a very, very personal disclosure, and I'm serious about this. So this is my cell phone. Can you see it? I don't know.
Yes. Yep. We got it.
According to Experian, on the Experian app, my FICO score is 731. That's not a great FICO score, by the way. That's not a great FICO. I've had an 8-something FICO score. I mean,
730 is what respectable.
That's respectable, right? So let's just talk about that score for a second. In my lifetime, I've never been late on a single payment for anything. Not a mortgage payment, not a car payment, not a credit card loan. I have 3 mortgages, right? Because I have my primary and then I own some rental properties. I got 2 car loans. I have enough assets to make every single one of those payments for a decent amount of time. Now, you tell me, how accurate are these credit scores if I only have a 731?
Really? Yeah.
Well, they're obviously...
And P.S., I work in an industry where I would have a hard time working if I defaulted on my loans, right? So how is this an accurate score if I only have a 731? Let's be honest.
Well, part of the problem is FICO has been using the same archaic system for almost 2 decades. We're going on 20 years now. So they're going off of things like...
Good thing they raised the price for that archaic system 500% over the last couple of years.
That's right.
Wait, I forgot to impute this year's price raise.
So that's the deal. Is there more to be said on this topic?
There is not a lot more that can be said.
No, not until we roll out 10T and they raise prices again.
Yeah. The reality is it's not going to get any better. And the problem is we look to the MBA to, again, address some of these issues. And FICO is one of the bigger due-playing firms that's there. And they were the major sponsor at the last annual event. And so can we expect them to make a change on this? No. That is not going to bring the leadership. That's why, again, I believe in the leadership that HLA is going to be bringing in the years ahead. I think it's really important. And then also, I really applaud you, Greg, for getting out there and getting on the soapbox. This has not been a popular topic for you to bring up. It's brought a fair amount of gunfire at you.
Yeah, for sure. That just goes with the territory. But IMBs all support it. You know, there's a lot of frustration around the lack of ability to change things that are meaningful to this industry. LO Comp has been out there for a long time. trigger leads. I don't believe that's going to happen. I'd like to talk to you about that real quick, Taylor.
What do you mean? You don't
but
think the House is going to magically convene in the next 24, 48 hours before
change trigger leads? Yeah.
And that's not going to happen?
I mean, the fact that the Senate approved their version, they had already done that. They had already said that so I don't know what that whole thing was all about a week ago or so, where they announced it's moved on to the House. Why was the MBA, why was Brokers Action Coalition so optimistic that this would happen? You know, what happened where it all fell apart at the last minute, Taylor? I mean, the MBA would say, well, the bureaus got involved and they really started to push back in a substantial way. And maybe that's what happened. I could understand that. Taylor, you tell us what happened. How did it all fall apart?
This is where I do my thing where I don't actually answer the question. You've seen me do this before.
I'm not going to let you get away with it.
I know. You're not going to let me.
Is that part of the delay, the cough?
Yeah, well, Dave does it. Why can't I?
Well, yeah. Well, he's been doing it the whole conversation. So,
of course, I don't forget to hit the record button either. So, you know.
Ouch.
Yeah, low blow.
Yeah,
listen, if you're going to come into the cage, you're going to rumble. This is just the way it rolls.
That's
exactly. I feel a little bit like Joe Rogan right now.
If we ain't rubbing, we ain't racing. Go ahead. Go.
So, okay. I want to say 3 or 4 different things. The first thing I want to say is I've been saying from day one that we don't need new legislation to fix the trigger lead problem. We don't. We do not need new legislation. It's a little ridiculous that we think we do. Most trigger lead calls are violations of every single policy that you can think of. They violate the pre-screened offer of credit rules. They violate TCPA. They violate CAN spam. They violate numerous disclosure rules at the state level for non-disclosure of NMLS solicitations, unlicensed loan officers, yada, 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 yada. The list goes on and on and on. Our regulatory agencies need to actually enforce the rules that are in place today. And they have the authority to do that. The CFPB has authority over TCPA through Dodd-Frank in the first place.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
The CFPB can step in. The data brokers that are selling this data in the first place need to be auditing who's buying the data and what they're doing with the data, specifically Equifax and Experian and TransUnion. They should be held accountable to actually monitor that pre-screened offers are being made. The state regulators need to be monitoring and reviewing and doing exams on pre-screened offers to find out that the pre-screened offers themselves were properly made, properly documented, properly disclosed, met the rules and requirements within Reg B and Reg Z. There is so much legislation already in place that it is not necessary to take a bill and attach it to a Defense Authorization Act, which many of us forecasted was never going to make it through the doorway, and in fact ended up on the cutting room floor. Because it doesn't make any sense to put credit report stuff on a defense act. Let's just be honest. So that's number one.
Yeah, great.
And I said I had 3 things, right? I want to say number two, shoot, I can't remember what number 2 was because I got so wrapped up in number 1.
I think you were going to say that it's all about the money.
Thank you. It is all about the money.
Follow the money, man. Follow the money.
Follow the money, just like Dave said. Think about all the credit card companies that use trigger leads. Think about how much money Capital One and JP Morgan spend to send you letters in the mail. That is what you're up against when trying to cancel trigger leads. You're fighting that. And that is not going to go down without a huge fight. Not to mention the bureaus and Equifax and FICO and all those guys. So there's the money factor, which is a huge factor. And then there's item number 3. And item number 3 is fundamental. I'm just going to say it. I hate trigger leads. And you're going to hear me say the phrase, I hate trigger leads a lot over the next 30 days. I hate trigger leads. Somebody should throw a .com after that. You know that? That would be powerful.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hate triggerleads.com. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
You think that's a good idea, Greg?
It's a great idea, but
it would take a
I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says, I'm literally going to get you a t-shirt that says, I hate triggerleads.com.
It would take a brilliant person to pull that off, though.
Yeah. But here's the reality. It's not going to make a difference for the very reasons you say it. It's not going to make a difference. We can hate it all we want. It's here to stay because of the economics that are behind it. It's just a reality.
We supported, CHLA supported the Reid bill because it's a good bill and it was done the right way. We supported the Torres bill. We supported the Rose bill. We supported every bill. Some of them we liked more than others. I think that there are some difficulties with some of the legislative approaches. But again, the reality is our regulators can take action and solve a lot of this problem through simply acting.
So I want to just throw something out. I know you want to wrap, David, but
you want to wrap? Are we wrapping?
I'm sure that was terrible.
That was my look, DJ Jazzy Jeff right here.
You did not sound like EPMD there. But obviously the biggest loser with Trigger falling apart.
Don't call me a loser on this.
Is the consumer. But think about this for a minute. You know who the second biggest loser is? Not far behind. Anybody want to guess?
The loan officers.
Nope.
They're dealing with this.
I hate when people ask me questions where I know I'm going to give the wrong answer. So if I could strike that record from the record, I would. But since it's you, Taylor, I kind of like that you got the answer wrong. Servicers. Because of the carve out that they had in the Trigger legislation, the one that the Senate was okay with, they were going to be the only ones that still had this ability.
Let me just correct you. Under the Torres bill, they were going to be the only ones. When Reed brought his bill, we had some additional input, and we were able to say, whoa, wait a minute. The originator of the loan is the organization that actually has the relationship with this borrower. So you don't be carving out, you got to include the originators in this.
You're getting in the weeds on me, buddy. Just hear me out. If I'm Stan Middleman and I've got this enormous book of $1 trillion in loans, every time he pulls a credit, the company that originated the loan, they know that's going on. There's all kinds of different tech companies out there, of course, because they do everything that notifies them, and that then becomes competition. So the fact that there was a carve out in there for them to be the only ones if they're holding the book, unless contractually otherwise stipulated. In other words, when we sold our book to Freedom,
I think what you're saying is that you hate trigger leads.
Well, I hate triggerleads.com. What I'm really saying is that just imagine, do you think Stan was happy about this? I'm not speaking for him, but when he saw that the NBA couldn't get it done, can you just imagine how infuriated he must have been? Because if he was already converting at 70% in a world of triggers, imagine how much his book stood to go up. If there was nobody else getting those notifications, he had even less competition. I know he's got the best systems and the best this and that, but he might have, how many millions does that lose servicers if the ball game stays the same? Tens of hundreds of millions.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Look, and fair credit where credit's due. There's a lot of people that leaned into the legislation and it just didn't work. And there were multiple trades, and CHLA was one of them. We supported the legislation. We just also focused on the fact that there's other ways to attack it.
Well, and I just want to thank the MBA, CHLA, Kate Sweeney,
BAC,
Brendan,
and NAMB. By the way, for the record, NAMB was actually the first trade association on this. NAMB was the trade association that kind of broke the story, 2 years ago, I think, when the original proposal from Rose was announced. It was NAMB that was pressing on that.
Yeah, all of them. I mean, everybody that I'm not sure there has ever been. I mean, this has to be top 5.
This is an all of us. It's an all of us thing, Greg.
But Taylor, I mean, if you combined all of the resources, the time, the money, the man hours, the travel, all the meetings, I mean, this has to be one of the most costly losses that our industry has ever seen when it comes to lobbying. It has to be number one, right? I mean, I don't know if you could think of something in your head that rivals it, but just a thank you to everybody that put their heart and soul in particular, the NBA, because they fought.
Don't be discouraged. Keep on hard. Stay on. As we wrap this
Stay
up,
on it.
Taylor, I want to hear what are the initiatives that CHLA is focusing on in 2025.
Wow. All right. So I'm getting tested. Well, first and foremost, heavily into LO comp, but not just LO comp. We want there's other components of Dodd-Frank that it's time to revisit. Think that we're going to see, we're going to see a different kind of environment moving into 2025.
Yeah.
It's just the reality.
Yep.
With Doge and all of the Doge, duck, dip, duck, Doge. You see how I just did that?
That's pretty
It's going to be Doge ball. We're going to be playing Dogeball next year.
Yeah.
I literally just coined that on this call, #Dogeball. We're going to be playing Dogeball this time next year. We're going to be navigating through an administration that is looking to eliminate and reduce and streamline, which in a lot of cases is a great thing. But while we're doing that, we have to be thoughtful, and advocacy over the next 12 months is going to be more important than ever. Because the people that are coming into the space and are making suggestions like delete the CFPB, those people often don't have all of the understanding and information about how that impacts our industry, right? So I'll give you a classic example. I woke up this morning and noticed that we now have a federal holiday next week that was unintended and unannounced. Did anybody notice that?
Yes, I just saw
Christmas Eve is now a holiday. because of a stroke of a pen. Yeah. Well, so Greg knows what happens when you have a federal holiday. Can't wire any money.
Oh, exactly right.
Can't get transcripts. Can't get flood. Can't do a lot of things, right? Wait, TRID, we got to count days and make sure we have sufficient days in our disclosures for TRID, because all of our TRID rules are wrapped around business days and all of our business days are wrapped around holidays. So the point here is sometimes great ideas and good intentions end up with unintended negative consequences, right? Yep. And shutting down FHA would be a really bad unintended consequence. There are some great opportunities for us to have a huge impact for the positive, but you kind of have to thread the needle sometimes, right? And so it's going to be more important this coming year, I believe, than ever before, that you're active and involved and part of the conversation in shaping what the housing and specifically the housing finance industry looks like under a new administration. We're going to have to give a lot of guidance and make sure people understand how decisions impact us when it comes to wheels on the road and boots on the ground.
Such a good point. Such a good point.
Well said. This has been a pleasure, guys.
That's been a real joy.
Let's do it again.
I appreciate you boys coming on again. We got this one recorded. The good news, it's recorded. It's in the tank. So we're going to wrap this up. Merry Christmas to everyone. And guys, do not hang up because we got to make sure this gets all the way loaded up.
All right. So long, folks. Happy holidays.
All right, everybody. Thank you so
Christmas,
much.
Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah. Happy Hanukkah, too.
Shabbat shalom.
You've been listening to Lykken on Lending. Our passion is to bring you the latest insights, trends, and updates from the world of mortgages. So on this show, if you're a seasoned industry veteran or just getting started, it's your go-to source for all things mortgage. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll be back soon. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Lykken on Lending.